Okay, Rabotai. Good evening, everyone. It's a pleasure to see everybody here. And Baruch Hashem, we have a tremendous zechut tonight to have with us Rabbi Duvi ben Shushan. He is an unavoidable speaker in the lineup that we have before Shavuot. Every year that he comes to our Bet Knesset, he is giving us such chizuk. Everybody comes out like it says, "Vayetzeu kol adat bnei Yisrael milifnei Moshe." We see the difference on the faces of everybody, the roshem that he marks, and the reason that it's so powerful is because Rabbi Duvi always speaks from the heart, and devarim hayotzim min halev nichnasim el halev. So it is a tremendous zechut for us to have your chacham with us, and you don't need any introduction, but I would like just to mention that tonight's class is sponsored generously by Mr. and Mrs. Elliot Romano in honor of their parents, Mr. Joe and Jeanette Romano. So we want to thank our sponsors. And Elliot has been a very active member, especially the last months, even though we had the situation with COVID-19, but with the youth program, Rabbi Miller and the whole team that have been, Baruch Hashem, very successful. And we want to wish him and his wife a lot of nachat from their children. And Bezrat Hashem, they should also see Orech Yamim for their parents, Joe and Jeanette, the whole entire family. And without further ado, I would like Chacham to give you the stand. So bechavot. Thank you so much again.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. And thank you. Again, another year you thought about me, and that puts a very special bond between us. And believe me when I tell you that bond means the world to me. Now, I'd like to thank the rabbi that gave me such an eloquent introduction. I'm hoping that maybe one day I can live up to somewhat of the introduction that the Rav just put on me. But nonetheless, Kemayim panim el panim. When you have two rabbis that love each other, it's because you could see that our hearts are connected. We simply want Klal Yisrael to be able to taste the sweetest waters of Torah, because that's what I want to talk about tonight. Tonight I want to talk about the sweetness, the waters of Torah, the greatest gift that was given to the Jewish people. And now is the time. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to ask you a question. I'm sure over the years you've heard, and this is a very common American quip, and that is, winning isn't everything. It's the only thing. Now, I know we've heard that many times, especially when it comes to sports, especially when it comes to all different type of competition. Winning isn't everything, they tell you. Winning is the only thing. Well, in Judaism, our hashkafa is absolutely different. Yes, winning is wonderful, but not only isn't it everything, but believe me, when it comes to the emphasis of where a Jew puts his life, it's more on the journey than on the final step of the finish line. And of course, we love winning. But by us, winning is what you put into getting there and not just the end result. And this is a big idea. And if you take a look, right now, we're not counting down to Matan Torah. We're counting up to Matan Torah. Because it's the journey of how you get to Shavuot that makes the difference of what type of Shavuot you're going to experience. And it's the journey of how we're going to prepare and what we're going to put in and how much we're going to sacrifice in a COVID-19 environment with so much of the world going wild around us to dictate how much Torah are we going to get this year, Matan Torah. It's a different attitude. They're all about winning. They don't care how you get there. We're all about the journey. What comes out of it, Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo, that's in God's hands. How different of an attitude a Jew has on goals, on life, on worthiness, on legacy. You see, because attitude by us is everything. Rabotai, I want to share with you on the Jewish attitude a very quick incident. Now, this is something that everybody knows. The Jewish people cross the ocean. They cross the Yam Suf. The last time we look back, Paro, the Egyptians are gone. Hashem finished them off once and for all. And now Hashem brings us to a place called Mara. Why is this place called Mara? I mean, that's an odd name. Mara means, like maror, it means bitter. You know why this place was called Mara? So just quickly to mention the pasuk, it was referring to the waters in that place. Now picture this, you have 3 million people, men, women, and children. They're coming now into a desert. Your biggest commodity, your biggest and most precious item in your trip, water. So Hashem brings them to a place that has water. There's only one problem. The water is so bitter, they cannot taste it. That's why the place was called bitter. Mara. Listen to this pasuk. Says the pasuk, Velo yichlu lishtot mayim. They were not able to drink the waters in this place. Mi mara. You know why? Ki marim hem, because they were bitter. Al ken kara shema Mara. That's why this place was called the town of bitter. Says the great Kutzker Rebbe, you got it all wrong. There was nothing wrong with the waters. The waters in this town was sweet. But you know how to properly read the pasuk? Velo yachlu lishtot mayim. You know why the people couldn't drink the water? Ki marim hem. Because the people were bitter. And to a bitter person, you could take him out to the most magnificent day. The sun is out, the birds are chirping. You could walk him along a tree-lined, beautiful path in a park. And all they see is gloom. And all they see is bitter. Here we are. We're in a COVID society. We're quarantined. On one hand, we're in a position that, depending on the attitude, we could see this as terrible. My gosh, I can't walk out of my own home. But we can also see this as opportunity. My gosh, I can't walk out of the house. I have so much time to spend at home, making up from all the years of the time that I should have spent at home. Where is the attitude? Depending on what the attitude of a person is, will dictate the journey and the perot and the results. It is all about the attitude of the Jewish people. So now what does Moshe Rabbeinu, what does he do? The people were bitter. Because of that, the waters, when they tasted the waters, it didn't taste good. Because when the person is bitter, no matter what you give him, everything is bitter. When someone's upset, the world is terrible. So what did Moshe Rabbeinu do? Hashem instructed him. You want to make the situation sweet? There's only one way. You want to sweeten water? You want to sweeten people? God tells Moshe Rabbeinu, take the etz, take the tree, throw it into the water, and the water will become sweet. What tree is that? Did anyone ever hear of a tree that has some sort of a sugary disposition? Did you ever hear of a tree that had a certain type of sap that was able to take the most bitter of water or the most bitter of people and suddenly turn them to be happy-go-lucky and sweet people? Says the rabbis, you know what tree that was? That was the tree of life. Etz Chaim hi la mahazikim ba. That's the tree of Torah. And when you take Torah, the tree of life, and you throw it into bitter waters, and you take the Torah and you throw it into bitter people, the Torah refines them. The Torah sweetens them. The Torah cleans up their midot. The Torah suddenly gives them a certain erech and a respect that once before they might not yet have had. This is the reason why Torah is compared to fire. Because when fire connects with something, it changes its essence completely. You take a piano and you throw it in the ocean. Not too good of an idea, but it'll sink. Nothing will happen to the piano. It's still a piano. You take a piano and you drop it into a fire, poof, no more piano. Fire changes the essence of whatever it comes in contact with. So too the fire of Torah. When a person learns Torah, it goes inside of them. It changes their bitterness to sweetness. It changes their essence to be a better, elated person. Rabotai, if we could grasp the depth of this point, then us counting to Matan Torah is like a child counting to the days of Disneyland. This would be the biggest turn on to every Jew if we understood what Torah would do for us as people. A better husband it would make us, a better father to our kids, a better human being, a better person with greater aspirations, raising the bar of life. Let me explain to you. There was a young boy in Bnei Brak. This boy was only 2 years old. He was brought to the great Rabbi Reb Chaim Kanievsky Shalita, and the father comes in, and Reb Chaim sees the boy with the long hair, because many people have the minhag that they don't cut the little boy's hair until he's 3 years old. Well, he brings the boy in with the long hair, and the father turns to the rabbi and says, Rabbi, I would like to ask for a heter. I would like to cut the boy's hair at 2 years old. I don't want to wait till 3. Reb Chaim says, why? Why don't you hold of the minhag of Ari, the minhag of the Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, and wait till he's 3? Why not? It's a beautiful thing. He says, I'll tell you. Because the boy was diagnosed with a tumor in his brain. And the doctors don't think he's going to live until his 3rd birthday. So I'm asking you, please, can you give me a heter? Let me at least cut his hair now, because we don't know what's going to be in the next year. Reb Chaim Kanievsky looks at the father and he says to him, you're going to wait until he's 3 years old, and you're going to cut his hair then. He's going to live a long life. It's at that moment that Reb Chaim turns to one of his aides, and he tells one of his gabayim, he says to him, bring the wine from the Siyum Hashas that I made this past year. You know that Reb Chaim Kanievsky Shalita, he finishes the entire Shas, the entire Talmud Babli every year, the entire Talmud Yushalmi every year, the Sifri, the Sifra, the Shulchan Aruch, the Torah Shulchan Aruch, the entire Torah, the entire Tanakh, all the Mishnayot, every single year. And he makes the Siyum on Erev Pesach. He doesn't make a Siyum on Shas. He makes a Siyum on Torah, Torat Nigla. Reb Chaim turns to one of the Gabbai, he says, bring me the wine from the Siyum of Torah. They bring him the wine. Reb Chaim takes the wine and he pours it into a little cup, and he turns to the boy and he smiles and he tells him, you want to drink a little wine? It's good for you. And the boy smiled. And Reb Chaim handed the father the wine, and the boy drank the wine from the Siyum of the entire Torah. Reb Chaim had a big smile. The boy was also smiling. Reb Chaim turns back to the father and reassures him, don't you cut his hair. You'll wait until he's 3 years old. This boy is going to live a long life. And with those words, the father and son leave. A month later, the father comes running back to the house of Reb Chaim on Rehov Rashbam. And it's off hours, and he's banging on the door. Let me in. He says, sorry, Rabbi's not seeing. No. He's seeing me. He's seeing me. I must talk to him. Let me in. They let him into Reb Chaim. He says, Rabbi, you're not going to believe this. We just took a PET scan. Right before treatments, we took a PET scan, a CAT scan on the brain of the boy, and the tumor is gone. Reb Chaim smiled, and he said, Mazel tov, Mazal tov. And the father says, what was this? A nes? Is this a miracle? He turned to the rabbi, he says, Rabbi, you're a miracle man? Is that what you are? You do miracles? Reb Chaim laughed. He said, that's not miracles. That's Torah. It's the tree of life. It's the kihem chayenu, the orech yamenu. And at the minute that boy drank a little bit from the wine of the siyum of Torah, you know what happened at that moment? The Torah entered this little boy's body. And like a heat-seeking missile, it went and found the bad and turned the bitter to sweet. Asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et Torato. How lucky we are. And that's exactly what the great Rabbi Reb Chaim Brisker used to say many years ago. He says, you know, it's funny, you take a look at all the mitzvot, and they have all different types of blessings, but generally they have one blessing, just one. When you go to do a mitzvah, you make one blessing. Okay, tefillin, there's 2 parts. So the Ashkenaz make 2, but we make one. One beracha on tefillin, one beracha on talet, one beracha on matzah, generally, al achilat matzah. But generally we make one blessing. All of a sudden it comes to Torah. How many blessings did you make this morning on Birkat Torah? 3. Shebachar banu, hamelamed Torah lamo Yisrael. Unbelievable. Why so many blessings? And the rabbi taught us, because when it comes to saying thank you, you don't mince words. The blessings on Torah is a blessing on the privilege to be able to learn. Hashem, thank you. You picked us to give the greatest treasure, the fire of spiritual heaven that enters a person, cleans them, refines them, elevates them to levels that we as mortal human beings just can't fathom. That's the gift that we're counting 10 days away from. And we're going to get it again this year. And that was the beauty of our community. Rabotai, open your hearts. Open your hearts. This corona, it hit us. It hit the world. It shut down the entire planet. It sent us into our homes. But think about it. Hey, Yetzer Hara, you might have closed our shuls, but you didn't stop our learning. You know what type of a beautiful statement we're making to God, where we're being tested. You know, when you have classes, when you have a morning program, a night program, rabbis come in, they call up the guys, hey, I want to see you tonight. Come on in, let's learn a little bit. Once a week, twice a week. So we get into it. It becomes part of our schedule. We get an hour learning a week. We have one night a week Havruta program. We feel we're good because we're part of something. But then all of a sudden, the world shuts down. No more shuls. No more programs. No more nothing. It's you at home alone. Now what are you going to do? Now let me see the real you. Was it something that you were doing out of routine? Was it something because everybody else was going to class, so it became a social event because that's the place that I see my friends or the people that are my circles? So I don't really go for the rabbi. I actually go for the guys. Yeah, the rabbi, okay, if I pick up something from him, it's fine. But, I'm really doing it for the guys in the bizet. You know what I mean? That's why I'm there. Now, we were tested. Are you going to still learn? Are you going to continue to learn that hour in the morning? How about that once a week at night? Do you know how we passed this in flying colors? Do you know how many people who once upon a time before this madness learned one time a week, now not only are they learning, they're learning more than one time a week. Say, Rabbi, we have more time. All these years I used to tell God, if you help me in my business, I don't have to work that hard. I can get a little bit more time for myself. So I don't have to work like a dog day and night. I'll give you back the time. I'll learn more. So God says, yeah, I'll give you time. Oh boy, will I give you time. I'll give you many more hours now. I'll give you more hours in the morning. Let me see what you do with it. I'll give you more hours at night. I want to see what you're going to do with it. And we shine through beyond belief. Every program, every morning program, every Torah center, they went online, they went on Zoom, and they got stronger rather than weaker. I don't know, I can tell you from me, Monday night, Wednesday night, in the shul, in the night seder, I'd have 10 guys on my table every Monday night, every Wednesday night in the overall general Torah center that we run. Now, Monday night, Wednesday night on Zoom, I don't have 10 guys. I have 35 guys. Why? Because they brought their friends, because they were looking for something to do, because everybody was cooped up at home. And little by little, the Torah got stronger. We showed Hashem that the learning to us means something, and we're ready to fight for it. That is the journey to becoming a Ben Torah. And that's what these days are all about. It's about the journey to show how much you want it. And tell me, when you get it, how much it does for us as people. When that Torah goes inside of us, it changes our essence and it makes us a better, bigger person. I have a brother that for many years had a school in Israel. But the funny name that they used to name the school had a Hebrew name. It was called Ruach. But the name that they named it, the yeshiva was known as Last Stop. The Last Stop. And you know why? Because the guys, the people that were sent to him that he learned with, these were guys that lo aleinu v'lo aleichem. Here in the United States, they fell to all different types of narcotics, drugs, and they were sent to rehab centers. And many of them went from one center to the next with no success. The rehab centers in the United States, and I challenge you to Google this, the good places run a 27% success rate of the intake of people that go to these places. 27% success rate. So a lot of these Jewish boys went from place to place and were not helped, till finally the world gave up on these guys. And you know where they sent them? They sent them to Israel. They sent them to this yeshiva called Last Stop. Do you know that this guy and his yeshiva had an 85% success rate? A yeshiva in Israel. How? There's no nurses. There's no doctors. But you know what there was? He had the medicine. He was able to put a sweet loving of a Torah into these guys. And he made it very small, very personal. He had one rabbi per two guys. One rabbi sat on a table with two guys. That was the whole class. That was the success. I went to Israel to visit the place. I saw these guys, the way they came in. They were completely gassed. I don't want to go into detail. You know what I'm talking about. They were completely fried. You come back a year or two later, and these guys, gentlemen, midot, class, clean, learning, regimen, discipline, schedule. Yeah. I turned to my brother Yossi and I said to him, what's the deal? I remember this kid when he came into the school. Baruch mechaya metim. How did you do that? What did you do to this kid? I don't get it. And you know what his answer to me was? I did nothing. I sat them down and I gave them a reason to love learning. And the minute the Torah went into these kids, it did for them something that no other rehab in the world came close to doing. It gave them their lives back. It refined them. It took the bitter and the ra, and it turned it to sweetness, and it turned it to spirituality, and it turned it to life and goals and a future to live for. He says, you got to believe in your product. I believe in my product. I fed these kids learning. I counseled them, of course I did. But my product, when the Torah went into them, it changed their entire essence. It even beat their addictions. We're living in a society where addictions are rampant. And sometimes people realize, now I understand why Torah is called Ben Chorim. En mi sheben chorim ela sheosek baTorah. Do you know who's the true free man, says the Gemara? A guy that learns Torah. Why? Because the society is filled with so many things pulling us that is so addictive that ends up enslaving us, where a person gets out of control and they can't even control themselves anymore. They are now an eved to the addiction. What's going to break him free? What's going to break him loose? Torah goes into that guy and cleans him up and breaks the nitiot. It breaks the drive. It gives him something bigger to live for, bigger to want, bigger to taste. And the minute you taste it, but the real thing, boy, is it sweet. I'm sure you guys out there have tasted the feeling of making a siyum on a Masechet, $1,000,000. You wouldn't trade that minute for nobody when you were up there saying the Hadran. And if you never finished the Masechet yet, go out there and do it. Because you've tasted already all the steaks that this world has to offer. You went on all the vacations that the world had to flaunt. You've been there, you've done that. You know already all that the world can try to fantasize. But now give a shot at what we have to offer. And if a Masechet is too much, try a Perek. And if a Perek is too much, make a siyum on one page. Yeah. Rabbi, what are you talking about? A siyum on one page? Yeah. Do you know that there was a guy that his father was an elderly man? He was a Holocaust survivor. He went through very difficult times, difficult life. This man was a champion. For him, he fought for Shabbat. For him, he fought for Kashrut. But Torah, because of his younger years, he was running for his life. He never went to yeshiva. He never had an opportunity to learn. And now the man is in his late 70s, and he turns to his son, and he says to his son, the one regret I'm living with in life. I never got to taste the sweetness of Torah learning. And I know from the people that do learn and tasted it, that they say there's nothing else in the world like it. And I also know that anytime I met someone who made a siyum, they look like they were on cloud 9. I want to taste that. I want to taste that. So he turns to his son and he says to him, learn with me. His son says, okay, Dad. And the father starts to learn. And he learns the first line and the second line. And then he pushes his way down to the Gemara and he finishes the first side. And then he turns the page and he finishes the second side. And he says to his son, this isn't easy, but I'm trying my best. I finished a page. I want to learn it again and again, this one page. And he learned that page again and again. And finally he turns to his son and he says to him, I want to make a siyum. He says, Dad, you only learned the page. You can't make a siyum. You didn't even finish the perek. Forget about the masechet. What are you making a siyum? He says, no, I want to make a siyum. This is the one page of Talmud Babli that I know. I waited my whole life. I know this page. This is mine. I want to make a siyum. He says, okay, I'll ask a rabbi if we can make a siyum on one page. He goes and asks the great rabbi, Reb Moshe Feinstein, Zechet Tzadik Lebracha, one of the great Gidolim of America. And Reb Moshe Feinstein comes back and he tells the man, son, your father, he can make a siyum on one page. He said, what, Rabbi? He says, yeah. Tell him I give my blessings and I want to come. I want to be there. Could you imagine this great Ashkenaz Gadol Hador, Reb Moshe Feinstein, the greatest rabbi who lived in New York at the time, 20, 30 years ago. He says, not only could your father make the siyum on one page, I want to come. And the next day, Reb Moshe Feinstein came to the siyum, and this 77-plus-year-old old man makes the siyum on one page. And he finishes the page. And he says, Hadran alach, dav bet, in Masechet so-and-so, v'hadrach alan. I will return to you, my beloved page, and you'll return to me. And then he says the Kaddish. And then they put out a big spread with a l'chaim, mazal tov, mazal tov. And Reb Moshe Feinstein was smiling. And sure enough, the next morning, this 77-year-old old man who made the first siyum on a page of Gemara, the next morning, he passed away. He died. And that afternoon was the funeral. And the great Rabbi Reb Moshe Feinstein comes to the funeral. And amazingly so, he gets up and he says, Yesh shekoneh olamo b'sha achat. There are some people that acquire olam haba in one moment. V'yesh shekoneh olamo b'daf echad. And there are some people that acquired olam haba with one page. One page. But it's mine. And when it goes inside me, it turns all the bitterness into happiness. It gives me a feeling that my neshama is flying. It refines the person and gets rid of the bad midot. It elevates the person to levels that we can't understand, because that's the beauty of the Etz HaChaim. God says to Moshe, throw the tree into the bitter water and you'll see how sweet it'll become. That's the gift of learning Torah. Asher b'harbanu mikol amim. Thank you for the gift that you gave me. Gentlemen, open your hearts for a moment. We have something special. There's a program out there It's called communityshas.com. The entire app community is getting together to finish the entire Shas by Shavuot, which is 9 days away, maybe less, 10 days away. Sorry. How is that working? You go on to the website, communityshas.com, and everyone in the community is taking one page. But that's your page. That's your contribution. Because at the end, when we together with all our pages make a siyum on Shas before Shavuot, siyum is also the letters Samach Mem, which is the name of the Yetzer Hara. Siyum means to end. Siyum, Samach Mem. It brings the Yetzer Hara to an end. It could bring this ridiculous virus to an end. That's the power of Siyum. It ends all the bad and brings blessing to the Jewish people. Come on board with us. Take one page, but be a part of us, because the minute you connect to Torah, you taste something that this world has never seen before. That's the privilege. Rabotai, you probably heard the story, the Gemara Berachot, in the 9th Perek. The Romans, they got up and knew that the strength of the Jewish people is Torah learning, so the Romans outlawed Torah complete. Anyone found learning, teaching Torah, they were going to be incarcerated, later on tortured and killed. The great Rabbi Akiva, he goes out the next day, and in spite of the death sentence the Romans put on the Jews, what does Rabbi Akiva do? He goes out and he teaches Torah like regular day. And not only he teaches in the public. He teaches to masses, to thousands of people. A man comes up to him by the name of Papos, and he says, Rabbi Akiva, ma ta oseh? What are you doing? Sakanat nefashot. You're teaching Torah in public. You know what's going to happen? They're going to catch you. They're going to arrest you. They're going to kill you. Rabbi Akiva says, my friend, let me explain to you something. There was once a fox that was walking along the river, and he sees the fish going back and forth inside the water. The fox says to the fish, fish, you're running back and forth constantly. Why are you always moving? Stay in one place. The fish says, I got to keep moving because I'm scared of the nets of the fishermen. If I stay in one place, he'll scoop me up. So I got to keep going back and forth. So the fox says, oh, you're worried about the fishermen? If that's the case, come out of the water and stay on land with me. We'll live together like good buddies, and I'll protect you, and we'll be friends. The fish looks at the fox and says, Tipesh ata, they call you the smartest of all the animals? You're the smartest of all the animals? He says, here in the water, where I have a chance of living, and even here it's dangerous for me, but at least I'm in the water. But to go out to land where I have no shot of living at all? Could you imagine such a ridiculous idea? Says Rabbi Akiva the Papos. A Jew that learns Torah is a fish in water. There'll always be danger. There'll always be issues. But at least I'm in my habitat. I'm in the place that I can survive. And I have with me the koach to make it through. But to leave the Torah is for a fish to leave water. We can't live on the land. A Jew cannot live without Torah, like a fish cannot live without water. And because of that, Rabbi Akiva taught Torah. And sure enough, gentlemen, you know what happened? They arrested Rabbi Akiva, and they took Rabbi Akiva to jail. A few days later, the Gemara tells us that Rabbi Akiva in jail, another man was brought in and thrown in jail as well. And who was it? Papos, the guy that complained about Rabbi Akiva learning. And Rabbi Akiva looks at Papos, and Papos looks at Rabbi Akiva, and they're both in the same jail. Rabbi Akiva says to Papos, Papos, what are you in for? What are you doing here in jail? And Papos says to Rabbi Akiva the legendary words, Ashrecha Rabbi Akiva, shenitpasta al divrei Torah. Praise to you, Rabbi Akiva, at least you were arrested for divrei Torah. Oy lo lepapos, shenitpasta al dvarim beterilim. Woe is to Papos that was arrested for dvarim betelim, for stupidity. Rabotai, what was Papos arrested for? He doesn't answer the question. What stupidity, what dvarim betelim was it that he was thrown in jail for? He doesn't tell you. But there's a Gemara and a Midrash that tells you in Masechet Makot that there was once a little town in Lud, and the Goyim wanted to frame the Jews, so they killed the daughter of the mayor of the town, who was a Roman general, and they took the girl's body and put it in the backyard of one of the Jews to frame the Jewish people. When the Roman general, the mayor, comes looking for his daughter, he finds her body in the backyard of a Jew's house. He gets so angry. He surrounds the whole city with his army. And the Roman general announces, if you give me the people, the man that killed my daughter, I'll let the city live. But if you don't give over the killer of my daughter, I will wipe out the entire city. Jews, men, women, and children. Just then, one man walks out of the city, one Jew, and he walks up to the general and he says, Ani ha'ish, I'm the guy, the murderer. I'm the one who killed your daughter. Now, in truth, we know good and well that they were framed. It was the Goyim that killed her. But this Jew was ready to take a bullet to save the entire city. This guy saved the lives of thousands of Jews. You know who that guy was? That guy was Papos, who was thrown in jail with Rabbi Akiva. And now let's revisit the story. Rabbi Akiva, why are you learning? Rabbi Akiva, he gets arrested. Papos gets arrested for saving the whole city's lives. Rabbi Akiva asks, Papos, what are you doing here? Papos says, Ashrecha Rabbi Akiva, shenitpasta al divrei Torah, oy lo lepapos, shenitpasti al dvarim betelim. What? What do you mean dvarim betelim? Papos, you went out, you said you did something you didn't do to save the life of thousands of families in a Jewish town, and you're calling that dvarim betelim? Small things, things of stupidity? And you see from here, says Papos, that even saving thousands of lives in comparison to the learning of Torah is considered dvarim betelim. Wow. That goes to show me one thing. It goes to show me that I know that I don't know the power and the value of limud Torah. It's so great that when they said Talmud Torah keneged kulam, it was even greater than the saving of lives of people. How do you explain that? I don't know. But I do know that in God's eyes, there's nothing greater that when a Jew connects to Hashem through the learning of Torah, like we're coming right now to Matan Torah. Do you know that the Chatam Sofer writes, and he says something fantastic. He says every year in Rosh Hashanah, God decrees how many wars are going to be in the world. On every year Rosh Hashanah, says Chatam Sofer, God also decrees how many machloket are going to be in the world of people fighting with each other. Says a Chatam Sofer, but when two gentlemen, Jews, come together and they start learning Torah, when two rabbis come together and they start learning Torah and they have a machloket, God takes the machloket of the rabbis, God takes the milchamot of Torah between two rabbis, and he accepts it instead of the milchamot of the world that were decreed for that year Rosh Hashanah. How do we know that? Because we say in the pasuk, Taned be'Eliyahu zachulatov, kol hashoneh halachot muftach lo sheben haba, shenemar halichot olam lo, al tikre halichot el halachot. Talmidei chachamim marbim shalom ba'olam. How? How do Talmidei chachamim make peace in the world? How? You got two guys sitting in shul, learning a Gemara together, arguing with each other, fighting with each other. How does that bring peace to Iran? How does that bring peace to the Middle East? How does that bring peace to North Korea, for heaven's sake? How does that bring peace? And the answer is, God says, when you fight in learning, when you have machloket in Torah, when you have milchamot in Torah, it's so delicious to me that I'm willing to accept those milchamot instead of the milchamot that I decreed that was supposed to happen that year on Rosh Hashanah. Marbim shalom ba'olam. The milchamot of Torah takes away and is accepted instead of the milchamot of the world. The machloket of Torah, Abaye and Rava, Rabbi Yochanan Resh Lakish, Rabbi Yehuda, Reb Meir, all the famous machloket in Gemara. But when you learn that machloket, you know what you just did? You saved two guys around the corner from fighting, because God says, I'll take this machloket instead of that one. Look at the power of learning. Look what it does for the world. Look what it does for a Jew. And look what it does for us. It makes us a different people. Says the Vilna Gaon, there are three categories that this world is built on. Ben Adam l'chavero, Ben Adam l'makom, Ben Adam la'atzmo. Ben Adam l'chavero, between me and my friend. Ben Adam l'makom, between me and God. Ben Adam la'atzmo, between me and myself. He says, the three cardinal sins that a Jew is never allowed to do, he's even supposed to get killed and not do, those sins are the worst things in those three categories. The worst thing that a guy can do between him and God is the sin of avodah zarah. Better get killed. The worst thing that a guy can do between him and his friend is ritzicha, murder. You took the guy's life. Better get killed. And the worst thing a guy can do between him and himself is gilui arayot. It makes us a people of ill repute. It makes us a decadent people, an immoral people, a zebalet people when we act in that way. Says the Gaon, something that only the Gaon can say. He says the same thing is true with the three greatest things a Jew can do in this world, like we read in Pirkei Avot. What are the three things that hold up the world? Ala Torah, ala Avodah, Gemilut Hasadim. Says the Vilna Gaon, the greatest thing that you can do, Ben Adam l'chavero, Gemilut Hasadim. Do for him a favor, act of kindness. The greatest thing you can do for God is avodah, tefillah, serving him. When you serve God, that's the greatest what we can do to connect for God. And you know what's the greatest thing a Jew can do? Ben Adam la'atzmo, between him and himself? Torah. When he learns Torah, he becomes an elevated person. He becomes a high-class, refined Jew. A better father, a better husband, a better person. We've seen the unbelievable transformation when people began to learn and once they started learning, and how they became such refined and great people. Rabotai, we're building for ourselves. This is for us. You just got to want it. You got to want it enough. But said, well, 1 second, Rabbi, I went to classes and I learned Gemara. It's not as sweet as you're telling me it is. My friend, do you know anything out there that has real value, that's really HL, and in the beginning it tasted like candy? Did you ever taste a good wine? Did you ever taste an expensive wine? You hand that wine to a kid. His tongue is used to eating sour sticks and candy. You hand him a $500 bottle of wine. You hand him a little cup. The kid takes it back, and then he spits it out all over the place. You say, Shema Yisrael, buddy, you just spit out $20 worth of wine. What did you do? And the kid said, but it's bitter. And you look at the kid, Mejnun, it's bitter. The wine isn't bitter. Your tongue is not cultured. Your tongue isn't used to tasting the delicacies of this world. But wait, stand there. Take a drink. Take another drink. In the beginning, it's bitter, but then it starts working on you. Then it starts getting comfortable. How do you think the big wine connoisseurs became professionals? Off of one drink? They first had to learn how to drink. And now that they know what the pleasures of a good bottle of wine, now they don't even have to go on vacation. They can go to the store, buy a good bottle of wine, sit back in a quiet room, and just have a glass of wine, swigging it together, taking it back, enjoying the aroma, taking in the bouquet of roses as it comes down and it digests. And this is a guy on a high. Why? He cultivated the taste of the better things in this world. Torah is wine. In the beginning, you first taste it, it's bitter. But you got to taste again, and you got to taste again, and then give it a little bit more. And suddenly it starts to grow on you. And you start to say, wait 1 second, this is captivating. Wow, this is integrating. Wow, this makes me think. Wow, this makes me sharp. Hakim, Chacham, Hakim, it makes me sharp. And little by little it grows on you, and suddenly you begin to realize that there's a taste here that's so enjoyable that the bottle of wine of Torah is a trip, an enjoyment, something that if a guy doesn't taste, he's missing the finer things in this world. Rabotai, I want to end off, and I want to tell you, I know my time is now over, so let me just mention, in this society, we need Shmira, we need Torah, and we need the sweetest and the greatest holiday, Matan Torah, to come and to enter us, to clean us, and to take us out from this terrible virus and for what Klal Yisrael is going through. Let me just end off, and let me just tell you this. Borei Olam gave us a gift, and he's going to want to know how we took care of it. Did you hear that amazing story? And if you did, forgive me. But I'm closing. Did you hear that amazing story about the woman who was blind, never thought she'd get married? She meets a guy, falls in love with her, and he tells her, I'm going to take care of you for the rest of my life. And she says, but I'm handicapped. I can't even see you. He says, I understand, but I can see you. And you're beautiful. I'm going to take care of you for the rest of my life. They get married, and he took care of her, and he took her, and he brought her, and he did everything for her. One day they're home listening to the radio, and they hear this amazing advertisement about a doctor in New York City that came up with this revolutionary concept. The doctor came up with a concept of not a heart transplant. I know you heard of a kidney transplant, but this doctor came up with the concept of an eye transplant to be able to give someone the ability to see for the first time. When the wife heard this, she went crazy. My gosh, there's a possibility for me to see. She comes to her husband and says, please call. The husband calls up. He says, we just heard you're taking people for the study, for the eye transplant. They said, yes. Would you like us to put her on the waiting list? He said, yeah, please. How long is the waiting list? They said, right now it's about 22 years. I said, what? He said, 22 years. The waiting list is 22 years. You see, because by hearts, by kidneys, so they have a shelf life. But the eyes, not too many people are donating. And because of that, the waiting list is 22 years. He says, Shema Yisrael, 22 years. He says, okay, please put her on the list. He hangs up and he tells his wife, I'm sorry. I know you're excited, but the waiting list is 22 years. She said, what? 22 years? Okay, even if I get to see one day of my life, it's worth any other experience that life can give. You put me, yes, I put you on the list. 2 weeks later, the husband comes home and the guy is jumping and happy, and she senses that he's literally sameach. She says, what's going on? He says, you're not going to believe this. The lab, they called my office. And they said to me that they were so moved by my emotion for my wife to want to see, that they said quietly, they're going to do me a favor, and they moved you all the way down the list, and next week we're going to do your eye transplant. She said, what? Next week? She was dancing. She couldn't believe the news. She said, Shema Yisrael, I love you. Thank you. I'm going to see. I'm finally going to see you, my husband. I'm finally going to see the world. The next week, that morning, they get up to go out to the city, and the husband turns to the wife and says, honey, before we go, there's just one thing I never told you when we got married, and now I need to tell it to you. She says, what? You're keeping secrets? No. This was something I was going to tell you eventually, but now's the right time. In truth, honey, you're not the only one that's blind. I'm also blind. Just I'm more functional. And the minute I saw or felt your presence, I loved you and I took care of you. I just need to tell you now, because you're getting the transplant. And when you wake up, you'll be able to see. And then you're going to look at me, your husband, and you're going to see a blind man. That's not what you were expecting. So I'd rather tell you now, so there's no surprise. She says, what? You've been blind all these years, but you've been taking care of me. He says, yeah. She says, you take the transplant. He says, no. I'd rather you see, because the way I took care of you, with a pair of eyes, you're going to take care of me. She says, 100%. That day, they go out to the clinic. The transplant surgery begins. It was a success. The next morning, she wakes up and she lays in the bed, and she's a mummy with bandages all over her face. The doctors come in, and the husband is sitting there with sunglasses on, holding a stick. And slowly they take off the bandages. And she opens her eyes. And she sees shadows. And then she sees silhouettes. And then little by little, she starts to see for the first time color. And then she sees her husband's face. And she gives a scream. And she leans up and she hugs him. And she's crying. And the doctors are applauding. That night, she goes home with her husband. And she says, I'm going to take care of you the way you took care of me. I cannot believe this. I can see. And all the things I ever wanted to do, now I can do. And now she starts coming up. I'm going to travel to Switzerland. I always wanted to see the Alps. I'm going to travel to Paris. I want to see the Eiffel Tower. I want to travel to Africa. I'm going to see the lions. I could see. I want to see everything. Everything I missed out on the first half of my life. And the husband said, yes, honey, we're going to go everywhere. But then reality set in. A blind husband can't go everywhere. She wanted to go skiing. He can't go skiing. She wanted to go to Paris. Very difficult for him to fly. She wanted to go to Switzerland. Very hard for him to trek up those mountains and those hills. Till years later, they started literally growing apart. And he felt like a burden on her, to the extent that one day she called him up to work and said, honey, I think our lives are going different ways. I'm sorry. I just don't want to be held down anymore. And he says, I understand. I just want you to know that I love you. And I knew this day was coming. I'll go home. I'll clear out my stuff from the apartment. When you come home, I'll be gone, but I want you to know that I love you. And she says, I love you too. And that night she comes home from work and she sees in her bedroom that the drawers are empty and there's a letter on her bed. And she picks up the letter, and the letter writes, to my beloved wife, the one that I love more than anything, the one that I gave my heart and soul to take care of. I ask you just one favor, please. Take good care of those eyes, because those eyes were once mine. And then she realized she didn't miraculously come down a 22-year waiting list in a week. But those eyes were her husband's, who donated it to her to be able to see the world. Rabotai, the eyes, the heart, the feelings, and the emotion is what Borei Olam gave us as a transplant in the beginning of our life. The eyes is the Torah, so that through it we can see God. The heart is the emotion that we yearn for Him, we feel for Him. Hashem says, I gave you my eyes. I gave you my Torah. Don't turn on me. Use it for me. Use it to become a great person. The minute you grab onto the Torah and you become the great people of Torah, we elevate ourselves to become Klal Yisrael. Banim atem l'Hashem Elokechem. The only way to see Borei Olam is through the Torah. The only way to elevate, to become a great man. Remember what the Gaon said. The greatest thing a Jew can do, ben Adam la'atzmo, is the Torah learning. It elevates us. It refines us. It turns our midot into good. It takes the bitterness in a man and makes us great and sweet. That's the gift that's 10 days away. Start with a page and make a siyum on one page of Shas. Community Shas. Take one page, communityshas.com, and finish Shas with the whole community to get rid of the corona and to bring blessing to Klal Yisrael by Shavuot. But most of all, remember, a Jew with Torah, like Rabbi Akiva said, without Torah, it's a fish out of water. This is our calling to greatness. We should be zocheh, to be elevated people, to taste the sweetness of Torah, because once you taste that taste, everything else in the world is artificial flavoring. Thank you for listening, and we should be zocheh to a matan Torah and a Biat HaGoel Bimhera. Amen.